We spend the summer in upstate New York on Skinny Atlas Lake. So when our kids were young, we went down to Williamsport. Yeah.
Yes, I'm aware of that. You have a nice place up there.
Yeah,
I've
it's
stalked
great.
it. I actually
Yeah.
haven't, but
Yeah, it's a great spot.
yes, it is gorgeous. And in the summertime, we don't travel in the summer that much. If people ask you, where are you going on vacation? I don't want to leave Pennsylvania. It's amazing. So we have
Yeah.
great, it's a
Beautiful.
great area. Now, this time of year, I want to come to California.
There you
Yeah.
go. Well, you're welcome anytime. If you're out this way, let us know. We'd love to host you.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I was thinking about our conversation, and I like to learn about people and you kind of think about their journey a little bit. And I'm curious about what you're reading now, what you're learning now, how your own leadership growth. What are you learning, or what are you reading?
You want to take that one first, or you
Go
want
ahead.
me to go? Well, what I'm currently reading, I'm reading a book by Rachel Botsman, Who Can You Trust? And Rachel's an authority in the field of trust, and her book covers really the changing dynamics of trust in our tech-fueled world, moving into a virtual world, the whole, the words escaping me, the Airbnb sort of culture, the economy where there's a phrase for it. I'm having a brain lapse, but
It'll come to you in about 5 minutes.
Exactly. This idea that was unheard of, 10 years ago, this idea of renting a room from a total stranger and staying in their house, right? Without ever knowing them or meeting them, and doing it completely online, and the changing nature of trust, in the social world, how that happens. So that's an interesting read that I'm.
Yeah, well, and you're Mr. Trust Man, right? I mean, that's your thing. So that makes a lot of sense.
I've been,
Mhm.
I started getting into the field of trust about 15 years ago,
Yes.
and have been, researching, reading, writing, speaking, training in the field of trust.
Sure. I'd like to swing back, Randy. And you said, what are you learning, or how are you changing these days, or how have you been changing? But I know sometimes we need a little time to mull that one over. It's like, I don't know what I'm learning, It's like, but Ken, what are you reading, or what are you learning these days?
Well, Dan, I read a lot of spiritual stuff in the morning. I read the Daily Word and a whole bunch of other things, because I like to try to make sure I enter my day to realize that it's not all about me, and how can I really serve? I think we have two selves. We have an external task-oriented self that's used to getting jobs done. We have a thoughtful, reflective self, but unfortunately, the alarm goes off. And I love my friend John Ortberg, the pastor, said, why don't they call it the opportunity clock, or it'll be a great day clock, but no alarm, and you jump into your task-oriented self, and you're eating while you're trying to dress, and you jump in the car and you're running here and there and all. And what I have found is that if I can enter my day slowly and really think about, who I am and what I want to do, and thank the good Lord, it makes quite a difference. And then at the end of the day, I have a little journal, and I say praisings and redirections. What did I do today that I feel proud of? What did I do I wish I could do over? And you track those kind of things, and you can kind of improve your own behavior. And so I recently celebrated the 61st anniversary of my 22nd, my of my 21st birthday. So I'm just reflecting more, I think. As you get towards the end of the, people say, "Oh, Ken, you got another 10 or 15 years, I hope." But you just never know at this point. But life is a very special occasion. Margie and I, this June, will be married 60 years, and so that's been quite
Congrats.
special.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
she's the big reader in the family. She reads, and she tells me what she read, and then she's worried I'm going to give a lecture on it. I'm more of a tonal learner. I like to listen.
Yeah, he's very auditory.
I do the Audible thing. You guys, I'm an Audible member, so I really enjoy that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just actually listened to 4,000 hours. I don't know if you, 4,000 weeks. I don't know if you've heard of this book or not. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's a wonderful, wonderful book. That's the average lifespan, give or take, 4,000
Oh.
weeks.
Okay.
And it's a lot about finding focus and not chasing every dream, and very challenging. And for lots and lots of leaders, for me, it's helpful. So you may check that out if you're an Audible fan. It's on Audible. Ken, I wanted to say, I heard you say, the first time I ever heard you say, start your day slowly. It was in West Palm Beach, and that stuck with me, man. That is something I've really encouraged people with, and just, to say that to someone, it's tough. But even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes.
That's right. It doesn't have to be a long time. No.
No.
Yeah.
So Randy, I said I was going to come back and ask you, what are you learning these days?
Yeah. That's a wonderful reflective question, Dan. I am learning that leadership is much, much more about who you are rather than what you do. We specifically talk about this in our, new book, Simple Truths of Leadership, but it's something that I've believed for a long time and just becomes more clear every day. Leadership starts with a heart transformation. And once you can understand that and get it right on the inside in terms of what your values are, why you want to be a leader, are you here to serve or be served? The rest starts to take care of itself. I think we're all, in the same leadership development field, and write about leadership, talk about leadership. And there are 1,000,001 different models and constructs, right, of how to do this and how to do that. And yet, if we just bring it back to the simple truths and we get the values right on the inside, the behaviors start to take care of themselves. So that's really what I've been learning, especially as we've, worked on this book, and getting to work with Ken for so long. I've worked with Ken for over 25 years. And so he's a mentor. I've learned under him, and it's just, that it's an ethos. It's a way of being, I guess. Leadership to me is very much an ethos. It's who you are, and then the behaviors and techniques, all that, start to take care of themselves.
Yes. Frances Hesselbein, I had a conversation with her some years ago, and her definition of leadership is mind-boggling. It's not deep necessarily, but her definition is leadership is a matter of how to be, not how to do.
Oh,
and she tells a great story because she got the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and she was there. She thought, I feel like I have to say something smart. And she said, that's where I kind of put the definition that I like to use together.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's disorienting to so many leaders to come at it like you're saying, Randy, because it's like, just tell me what to do. Tell me the next 5 steps, and you're telling me how to be. And it's like, ooh.
Right. Yeah.
Dan, that's why, because I've got interest in the same thing, but I've been really fascinated by the human ego, because I think the biggest thing that keeps us from being servant leaders and all is our human ego. And there's 2 aspects of that. One is false pride, where you have a more than philosophy, and the other is fear, self-doubt, when you have a less than philosophy. But most of them, you're focused on yourself. And we've ended up starting a 12-step Egos Anonymous program, and got some of my clients, when they meet with their people on a weekly basis, they start off with an Egos Anonymous meeting, and it's just like an AA meeting. You stand up and say, hi, I'm Ken, and everybody says, hi, Ken. And you say, I'm an egomaniac. And the last time my ego got in the way, and you have to give an example of false pride or self-doubt in the last week. And I always tell people, if you can't think of one of those during a week, then you lie about other things too,
Yeah.
you know, because the ego is something we have to really deal with, all of us.
Yeah.
And the more we identify it, the better chance we have to control it, because that's what keeps the focus on ourselves, protecting ourselves.
Thanks so much for saying that. Humility is my favorite topic I know nothing about. And I've been keeping notes on it, and I have an aspiration to write a book on humility. I've been keeping notes on it for years and just writing down ideas. And you mentioned this in your webinar, the Ego's Anonymous thing. So I actually went out and searched around. I think it's such a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
I can just, hi, I'm Dan, and I have a big ego, or like you said, I'm an egomaniac. It's like,
Right.
oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah. No, it really is. It's powerful stuff, and humility is, of course, the one that deals with false pride, which is, a lot of people think that's a weakness. And I don't know if you've ever researched who was it said it first, C.S. Lewis or Rick Warren or Norman Vincent Peale and I, but people with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think about themselves less. So it's not a weakness and all. And then the way to deal with fear and self-doubt is to trust the unconditional love of God. God didn't make any junk. My mother used to say to me, don't act like you're better than anybody else, but don't let anybody else act like they're better than you. There's a pearl of goodness in every human being. Dig for it, and that's been my kind of philosophy.
Wow. So, this ego thing, and I just wanted to ask you, because the book has two sections in it, one about servant leadership, and then one about two big sections, servant leadership, and the other about trust. Just to make sure we're talking about the same thing, how do you define servant leadership? I know ego is involved here, or pride is involved. So,
well, Dan, when I talk to people about servant leadership, a lot of times they think I'm talking about the inmates running the prison or trying to please everybody or some religious movement. But they don't understand there's two aspects of servant leadership. The leadership part is about vision, direction, values, and goals, because leadership's about going somewheres and behaving a certain way. And that's the responsibility of the hierarchy. It doesn't mean you don't involve your people in helping set the vision and all. But if people don't know what they're being asked to do and what good behavior looks like and all, shame on you. And that's the leadership part. Once that's done, then we turn the pyramid upside down. And now we get to, the relationships part, which is I work for you. What can I do to help you win, help you accomplish your goals, help you live according to the vision? And so we're big at saying it's both results and relationships. And Randy, tell them what you say to the audiences. I love that.
Yeah, it's a mindset and a skill set, in terms of servant leadership and building trust. And what was the phrase you were thinking of?
What you say about the and.
The power of the and. Yes. Yeah. When I'm working with groups, is I'll put 3 words on a flip chart. And as we're getting started in whatever work we're doing, and the 3 words are results and relationships. And I'll say, which of these is the most important? What's the most important word up here? And, half the crowd will say results, right? That's why we're in business. If we got to hit the numbers, we got to win. And then the other half of the crowd will say, well, I really think it's relationships, because if we don't have good relationships, we're not going to achieve those results. And there's always a few, wise people that say, well, maybe the word and is what Randy's getting at. And I say, yes, it's the power of the and, because they're both important, right? You can't have one without the other. And that's the misconception people have about servant leadership, is they think it's all about relationships, right? So it must be soft, it's let's get together and pat each other on the back and tell each other how good we are. And we neglect results. But that's not the case. Servant leaders understand that they have a purpose, they have a mission. Their organizations and teams have a mission, and that means achieving results, doing good work, serving their customers, their community, whoever it may be. So it's really a both and. It's the power of the and. And when people can really understand that and embrace that, I think they get beyond those self-imposed limitations of what servant leadership is really all about.
Fantastic. Let's stick on this idea of servant leadership, and leadership is first about who we are. It's an inside out activity, not an outside in activity. And so, character and personality and who you are and what's important to you and values, all of these things come into play. And I'm just thinking about formative moments. I'm thinking for you all, I wonder if you could think back to a time when someone said something to you, or something happened and it really shifted the way you thought about yourself, or, what your role was. Ken, I know you met Dr. Spencer Johnson at a dinner party, and that sort of changed your trajectory a little bit. But so that's one that probably you might say, but I'm just curious, what happened? Who said something to you that shifted the way you think about yourself or thought about yourself?
Well, Dan, I had an amazing father who grew up at West Point. His father was a doctor there at the military academy. And when he got out of high school, he loved West Point, and he sat in the back with Douglas MacArthur's graduation speech, and he saw Jim Thorpe run back the 2 touchdowns. And he wanted to go there. And his father said, "No, son, I think you should go away to school." So my dad said, "If I can't go here, I think I'll go to Annapolis." And so he went to the Naval Academy. But he graduated in 24. And they didn't think they needed naval officers in 24 because World War II had just ended. And so after his senior cruise, they dismissed him, and he went to Harvard Business School in January 25 and majored in finance and went down onto Wall Street and built his career. He was about to be a vice president of National City Bank. And he came home and said to my mom in 1940, I was 1 year old. And he said, "I quit today." And she said, "You quit what?" He said, "I quit my job." He said, "To do what?" He said, I rejoined the Navy. She said, "You got to be kidding me." He said, "Well, didn't I tell you when we got married, if the country got in trouble, I thought I owed it something, and Hitler's crazy and the Japanese will be in this." So he goes from a potential vice president to a second Louis. They put him in Brooklyn Navy Yard. And Pearl Harbor happens, and looks like he's going to stay there because he's 40 years old with little experience, and that wasn't my father's style. So one of his classmates had stayed in and was the top guy at the Bureau of Personnel for the Navy in Washington. He called him, said, "John, what do you got for an old fart in the action? I got to get in the action." He said, "Ted, let me check on it." And he called back a couple of days later. He said, "Unfortunately, Ted, the only thing I have for somebody with your little experience is a suicide group going into the Marshall Islands." And of course, he didn't tell my mom, but he said, "You got your man." And they bumped him up to a Commodore, and they gave him 12 LCIs, these landing craft infantry. They brought in the Marines and the Frogmen, which are the SEALs today, into Saipan, Kwajalein, and Wetak, Tinian, all the major battles in the Marshall Islands. About 70% of his men were killed or wounded. And so it was pretty amazing. Dad somehow survived. They got a picture of me at 5 years old with his suit saluting him as he came home. He'd been gone for 2.5 years because you couldn't commute in those years, So I'll never forget, I won the president of the 7th grade. I had an interesting thing. I went to a 95% Jewish elementary school, and Jewish holidays, they put us all in one room. But I won the president of 7th grade because we also merged with a 90% Black elementary school. And so I was a basketball player and I was smart. And so I got elected president. So I come home and I tell my dad, "Dad, I'm the president of 7th grade." And so my father said, and this really impacted my whole life. He said, "Son, now that you're president, I think your leadership training should begin." He said, "Never use your position. Remember that great leaders are great, not because they have power, but because people respect and trust them." And he said, "It's a myth in the military. It's my way or the highway." He said, "Sure, in battle, somebody had to call the shots. But if you acted like a big deal over your men, they'd shoot you before the enemy." So he became my mentor of leadership, which was all about relationships and results. The both and thing was pretty amazing. I'm sorry to take so long, but I thought you'd enjoy the history of all of that. Amazing.
Isn't it wonderful that the people who have spoken into our lives in some way and changed us?
Yes.
Yeah. Very amazing.
Yes. So, what do you think, Randy? Do you have a moment when something happened, and you don't have to give a long, Ken, I mean, you're not going to interrupt Ken Blanchard, right? If he wants to talk, he talks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ken's got a keynote answer for every question that exists, So if you want to hear a keynote, just ask Ken a question and he'll give one for you. No, that's awesome. But he has such a wonderful history with his father. His father was such a wonderful role model. For me, it was a couple of pastors in my church. I became a Christian when I was 15. And as I got more involved in the church that I attended, I was given different leadership opportunities that I would have never thought possible. When I was in high school, sort of a little bit of my backstory is I grew up as the typical latchkey kid in the 70s. Single parent, my mom was divorced. We had our needs met, but we struggled. There were times where mom was on and off welfare, and she worked as a cashier in a grocery store, and then later as a legal secretary. And so I really, honestly, Dan, did not have much hope or aspiration for what I would do in life. I thought, I would just be, get an average old job and just kind of toil away. And through my experience in my church, I was given opportunities to lead within our high school youth group, and later as a young adult, and, led different projects and ministries and different things in church, and, actually preached some sermons and did different things that I never would have thought that this shy, quiet, kid would have done. And I think it sparks something in me that I actually do have something to offer. And then an early experience here at Blanchard, I started in my career in the project management function. And I was working on a project with one of our largest clients at a time, a very well-known pharmaceutical company that's in the news every single day. Our project started going south, and they were threatening to pull their business, and they were our largest client at the time. And my leader, her name was Barbara Hart, and she came to me on a Friday and said, "Randy, need you to go to New York on Monday and meet with the client and try to salvage this project and get it back on track. They're thinking of yanking all their business." And I said to her, I said, "Barbara, are you asking me if I want to go, or are you telling me that I have to go?" She said, "You have to go." So I went. I was there with a couple of other Blanchard colleagues. We actually ended up turning things around 180 degrees, got back on track with the client, had a very successful run. And it sparked something in me that made me realize the power of trust, because Barbara extended this massive amount of trust to me, and I didn't think I was the right person to go meet with these executives in their New York high-rise and, try to convince them to stay with us. But she trusted me. And what I learned from that was, wow, when you are able to extend trust to people, give them an opportunity to shine, man, that's when the magic happens. And when people are allowed to do that and succeed and grow and gain confidence, it just accelerates their performance beyond measure. So that was a real turning point for me that really sparked, this passion for trust and its power in leadership.
Wow. I forget who said it to me, but somebody said something about you don't earn trust. Trust is given. And
Yes.
you can unearn trust.
Yes.
And I feel like that's sort of what happened.
Yes.
In other words, you were trusted with something big, maybe bigger than you thought.
Yes.
You were comfortable with.
Absolutely. I love that saying as well, Dan, because trust is something that we have to extend to someone else, right? Nobody can do anything to quote unquote earn it. Yes, all of us should be trustworthy, right? That's sort of a way that we earn the opportunity for someone to give us their trust. But yeah, trust is something that we have to willingly give to someone else. And that's one of the simple truths that we cover is someone has to make the first move to extend trust. Leaders go first. It's the leader's job to extend trust to their people. It's not, the leader doesn't automatically get the trust by virtue of their position, their title, their power. It's something that they need to extend, and then it's reciprocated from their people.
It's so powerful, Randy, so powerful. And I mean, it just freaks me out. I hear this, you extend trust to people. They don't earn trust. You extend it. And it's like, ooh, I'm not sure I'm up for that task. You know what I mean? And there we are. We're back to the leadership is about who you are.
That's exactly right.
Oh,
That's
so
exactly
powerful.
right.
So powerful.
Dan, the key thing about our little book, and I'll hold it up here for you. Simple truth is that we have 52 ways you can become a servant leader or build trust. And each face-to-face page on one side will give a simple truth, like the key to developing people is to catch them doing something right, which is one of my favorite things. And then the other page will start off why people don't use it, because I ask people, how do you know whether you're doing a good job? The number one response I get is, nobody's yelled at me lately. No news is good news. The number one leadership style around the world is still seagull management. You get delegated a task, and then something goes wrong, and the manager flies in, makes a lot of noise, dumps on everybody, and flies out. But the real power is that if you build a relationship where you're catching people doing things right, they will really feel that, oh boy, I'm part of a team here and all. And there's 52 of these. There's 26 on servant leadership, which is my area of time that I've spent, and then 26 on trust. And you see how they go together, and people are saying, boy, I can take one of these a week with my people, or, several a week, or whatever I want, but it sets up a dialogue. It's not a complicated book to read. It's just a whole bunch of simple truths that Randy and I have learned over. But under the title of the book is the real key word. It says making common sense common practice, because what I have found is that common sense isn't always common practice, because people are always on to the next theory, but how many diets does it take to lose weight? Only one you stick to, and so what we're saying is that if you stick to some of these principles in here, that'll be the kind of diet you need.
It's Dan, there you go, holding it up. It's a very Dan Rockwellian book. Anyone who's a fan of, or a follower of Dan Rockwell, your blog that has such a tremendous following, short, quick hits, crisp, simple truths, right? This is the principle. This is what you need to do to put it into action. Very much the same manner in our book. We wanted to make it very user-friendly, right? So many, and this is not a knock on any other leadership book, but so many leadership books are, the thick tomes on, some grand principle, which we need and is wonderful. But yet sometimes you finish the book and you're like, well, that was really interesting. Put it up on the shelf, and we wanted something where people could literally keep this on their desk and say, oh, let me turn this week. I'm going to focus on this principle. The opposite of trust is not distrust, it's control. Wow, that's a new way to think about it. How am I exhibiting control in my leadership behaviors? Let me talk to my team about it. There's some discussion questions here that we can have a dialogue.
Wow.
So it's a very user-friendly manual. It's like a user manual for leadership.
Yeah. It's so powerful. And I'll tell you, it came here, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I guess. And I thought I was going to sit down and read it. And it really is not the kind of book that you sit down and just read through. I mean, you might skim through it. You might look at, what's in it, but it's the kind of book where you read a chapter, you look at the action steps, and you make a decision, let's do something about this. And to me, that's the way I'm using it and going to use it, is just keep, going through And by the way, I love the, you got this key idea over here. I mean, I'm that kind of person, right? I'm looking
Yeah.
through here. I want to know what this is about,
Yeah.
right? So there it is, man. It's awesome. So I appreciate it. I wanted to ask you, because, and this is, you can tie it to the book or not. I mean, but I was thinking about, everybody is so frantic these days. There's so much going on. And to even talk to people about, prioritizing and doing less so you can do things more, more meaningful things, it like freaks people out. They don't feel like they can do less. I just have to keep going and going. It's a terrible treadmill.
Yeah.
What comes to mind for you too when you start thinking about what's going on in the world for leaders these days?
Yeah. Well, I have such empathy for leaders in today's environment. And I'm a senior leader within our organization, and I have a large team of people that I have to look after. And so, I get to experience these challenges myself. And there is so much information and change coming at leaders that your head is spinning. You can't keep up with it all. And partnered with that is, I think, many leaders, by virtue of our positions, we're achievers. We want to do things. We want to accomplish things, right? And so we battle this FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. FOMO, fear of missing out. And so we feel like we can't, hone in our focus on certain areas because we're going to be left out or miss out on other things. And I think it's a fallacy, Dan, that we've bought into in our culture, is that you have to be everything to all people. And you simply can't. And you're going to run yourself ragged and diminish your own leadership effectiveness if you try to do that. And I believe the real power is leaders who can clearly identify, this is my sweet spot. These are my strengths. This is where I can make the most positive impact. And I'm going to double down and focus on that. And I'm going to consciously choose to say, I'm not going to engage in these other things. They're wonderful things, right? Whenever we say yes to something, we're inherently saying no to other things. And so we have to be really, really conscious about what we say yes to and keep our focus there. And in a leadership context, I think that comes back to, what are your core values? What's most important to you? Where can you be most effective? And hopefully the simple truths in our book will guide you to think about those things, to really reflect and think about, what are my most important leadership priorities?
Dan, to build on that a little bit, is that we have two selves. We have an external task-oriented self and an internal reflective self. Which one wakes up quicker in the morning? The alarm clock goes off, and my friend John Ortberg often said, why don't we call it the opportunity clock, or it's going to be a great day. No, alarm. And the alarm jumps you right into your task-oriented self. You leap out of bed, you're eating while you're trying to get dressed, and you leap in your car and all. And one of the things that we have found is really helpful is to spend a few minutes and enter your day slowly and think about your day. Who do you want to be today, and what's on your schedule, and all that kind of thing. And so that you really kind of enter your day slowly, not in a rush. And so that you can maybe make that difference. And then I like, at the end of the day, in a journal, have praisings and redirections. What did I do well today? And what do I, need to improve and all, and be reflective. So it's, we need to have better intentions so that our task and our orientation to get things done just doesn't keep on dragging us.
Yes, I hear two kind of very specific things here. One, Randy, know what you're good at, focus on, things that are important in relation to your strength. But I also see, choosing ahead of time how you show up,
Yes,
what you're about, what's going to happen during the day, and being a little more reflective as well. So you have one side is know your strengths, practice reflection, That's going to help leaders navigate a little bit. It's not going to go away, but there is a heck of a lot of turbulence, and you got to learn how to navigate it.
That's right. That's a great analogy. There's a lot of turbulence, and what do airline pilots do? They try to navigate to the smooth part of the sky, right? Where there's less turbulence. It doesn't ever go away. You're always going to have turbulence, but you have to know how to navigate. And if you don't have a clear North Star, as Bill George, writes about and talks about from his book, True North, if you don't have a clear North Star about where you're headed as a leader, what's important to you, what drives you, you're like a ship without a rudder. You're just subject to, going wherever the tide takes you. And how's that? I mixed two metaphors, flying an airplane and driving a ship.
Sure.
But I think everybody gets the point, right?
All right. You can mix the metaphors all you want.
Yeah.
There's a sentence here. It just really spoke to me because of its humanity. And sometimes strange sentences get me, but it says, when people don't understand what their leaders expect of them, they feel lost. I love that sentence because it has so much humanity in it, so much compassion in it. It just says, look, it's worth it. So, and I noticed there's a lot of humanity in the book, a lot of humanity.
Yeah. Dan, building on your earlier question about what am I learning? Another thing that I've been learning a lot recently is the value of making the implicit explicit. So many leaders have implicit beliefs or expectations about how they should show up and how their team members should respond, but they don't make those explicit.
Yes.
And so team members are left feeling lost because they don't know which boss is going to show up today, right? Is it going to be the good boss or the bad boss? And when leaders take the time to get clear on their leadership point of view, and we give some suggestions in one of our simple truths about how leaders can get clear on their point of view, when leaders do that and share that with their team members, literally share it, right? They write it out. They tell their team members, this is what I'm about as a leader. These are my beliefs. These are my values. Here's what I expect of myself. Here's what I expect of you. That makes all of that implicit explicit. Now we're all operating on a level playing field, right? We know what's expected of each other. There's no surprises. And when there's more predictability in a relationship, less surprise, trust builds, right? It's the unpredictable behavior that really erodes trust in relationships. So it's a key thing I'm learning. Make the implicit explicit.
One of the other sentences I marked, and I read, when I read books, I write in them. So by the way, occasionally I'll send off a book to someone that I've read and written in, and I don't even realize, because I've written notes that have nothing to do with the book either.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because sometimes a good book is a book that helps me think my own thoughts.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You read, and then you write down these ideas.
Yes.
But so I underlined in here, in the Simple Truth 20, love is the answer. What is the question? But if you ask someone who works for a self-serving leader to describe their boss, you'll hear the opposite of these characteristics. That's 1 Corinthians 13 up above. And I just got to thinking, how many leaders would dare to list off those qualities and say, this year I like to do the evaluation based on these qualities. Ow.
Oof.
Yeah. Patience.
Yeah. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not boast, right? What if we applied that to a leadership role, right? And that's what we're getting at in that simple truth. Love in the past has been that dirty 4-letter word that we don't want to use in business, right? And one of the wonderful things I think that has come out of the pandemic is the hunger and thirst people have for authentic caring leaders,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And leaders who demonstrate love. And sometimes the English language isn't the best at conveying the true meaning of love, right? You know, the Greek language has multiple words for what love means. We're not talking about the romantic, you know, ooey gooey, mushy sort of love. We're talking about the friendship, the deep brotherly love that you have for, you know, caring for people, and a spirit of benevolence, wanting what's best for them, right? Having
Yes.
their best interests at heart rather
Yes.
than your own self-interest.
You know, Dan, people have asked me, this sounds a little soft and all, does this really work? Well, I got this particular concept and having people evaluate you on the love passage adjectives from Jimmy Blanchard, who was president of Synovus for over 25 years. And they got chosen the number one company to work for in America by Fortune so often that Fortune asked them to stop applying, and they created an all-star list, you know, and Jimmy said to them, this is my leadership style. You know, my leadership book is the Bible. And it's a pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, well, and you don't have to, 1 Corinthians 13 is recognized whether you're a Christian or not, or, you know, just go to college literature class,
Right.
and you're going to get 1 Corinthians 13 in some of those classes because
Right.
it's just classic, right? And it's
Yeah.
it's lofty and noble. So
Yes.
I wanted to ask you guys, which of these simple truths do you think leaders struggle the most with?
Which one do you think, Ken?
I think the one we said, that feedback is the breakfast of champions. You know, I think people struggle with the whole concept of feedback, you know, because they think if people give them feedback, they don't want them to be the leader and all, rather than saying to people, feedback is the breakfast of champions for both of us. And I want you to be able to, if I'm getting off of where we think we're supposed to be going and how I should be treating you, I need you to tell me, and I'm going to feel the same way with you. And when we give each other feedback, it doesn't mean we don't want to work with each other. It means that we trust each other. It gets back to the trust thing. And I think that's one of the toughest ones for people. Feedback
Yes.
is the breakfast of champions.
Yeah.
You know, I think I want to give feedback. I don't think I want to seek feedback.
Yeah, that you are exactly right, Dan. Leaders would much rather give feedback than receive it. One of the simple truths I think leaders struggle with is the one that says, true servant leaders admit their mistakes. And I think because our ego gets in the way, many leaders struggle with saying, hey, folks, I goofed up. I was wrong, right? Because leaders are supposed to have the answers. Leaders are supposed to be charging the way, right? Follow me, do as I say, do as I do, hopefully. And to admit that you were wrong, that's a real ego challenge. But the paradox is that when leaders do that, wow, that is one of the most trust building moves that a leader can make. Whenever I work with groups and I ask them to, you know, hey, let's brainstorm a list of trustworthy behaviors. Almost always up near the top of the list is admitting mistakes, right? That conveys such a sense of authenticity and realness. I think leaders would, accelerate their success so much if they were just a little more humble and said, I'm wrong, folks.
Just to take that to a practical standpoint, Gary Ridge, who's the president of WD-40, and now he's, I think, the chairman. When he started about 20 years ago, he said, from now on at WD-40, there'll be no mistakes. There's only learning opportunities. And just to twist that from mistakes, which are negative, and you see your boss coming, you think you're going to look for mistakes. No, let's talk about learning opportunities. People go into his office and said, Gary, you know, we had quite a learning opportunity the other day. It could be really a big goof. And rather than saying, how could you be such stupid and all, say, that's interesting. What are we going to learn from this? And the last time they did it on they got a 92% employee engagement score. I mean, who gets that kind of score? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that's because they trust each other and they're in this thing together.
Yes, I know you've had a long relationship with WD-42, and your
That's right.
company has poured into them for many
Yeah.
years. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A final question, just, if someone were to take this book and put it into practice over time, how do you hope at the end that they're going to be different? And I know it's so broad that, it goes in so many directions, but I don't know if you could summarize what you hope the impact might be, but I'm going to ask.
Well, I would say, I hope that they come to the realization that leadership is not about you. At the end of the day, that's one of our simple truths. And we lovingly borrowed that from Rick Warren, in the opening line in his book, The Purpose-Driven Life, is it's not about you. And that's true in leadership. And if people can get to that point, both cognitively and emotionally, I think our book will have been a success.
Wow.
And they can understand, my role as a leader is not to keep the light shining on me, it's to direct the light to my people and help them succeed. And by virtue of them succeeding, I'm going to naturally succeed as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just can't help but say it, Randy. A simple truth is not necessarily an easy truth, and a simple truth is not. It's not sort of like, oh, I know that. No, I'm always learning that.
Yes.
I'm always learning, and have to be reminded. I mean, I haven't learned that it's not about me, not yet. I still get up in the morning and I think about myself first, and I'm thinking about myself most of the day, and it's like, oh my word, I need to walk into the room and lift my eyes up and look at the people in the room.
Yes.
Powerful.
Yes.
One of the things I hope people would take away is that profit is the applause you get for taking care of your people so that take care of your customers. A lot of times people think that, profit is the only reason to be in business. No, profit is the applause you get for creating a motivating environment for your people. It starts with your people. They're your number one customer. Then they'll take care of your number two customer. And then they become raving fans of your organization, and they take care of the bottom line. And boy, if people could remember that, wow, that's so powerful.
Wow. Completely shift many organizations if they would just kind of capture that idea.
Yeah. And
Well,
you nailed it, Dan. Simple is not easy, right? Simple does not equal easy. In fact, I think it's probably true generally in life. The simple things are often the most difficult to master, right? And we need that constant reminder of what are those simple truths, those touchstone principles that drive success, and how are we trying to live that? Back to Francis Hesselbein's quote, right? Leadership is about being, not doing. How are we being leaders? Not how are we doing leaders? How are we being leadership?
Yeah. Just such great stuff, you guys. And I'm thankful for the book. I think it's fantastic. It's, for me, again, it's sort of like once a week, get a section, decide what you want to focus on kind of book, or once a day if you're very aspirational. but just get it, and I hope everybody does get it and starts putting it into practice. I want to say thanks so much for your time today, gentlemen. I so appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. You're the best. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.